This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
But someone asked, hey, what's it going to take for AEW to sort of break through? Because it does feel like, you know, as you've said, and I don't think it's a bad word, but I think sometimes we get criticized when we say it, but there's not like an exponential growth that I expected and a lot of folks expected. Hey man, we signed CM Punk. Hey man, we got Daniel Bryan. You've got one of the best rosters in the history of wrestling, just a phenomenal group of talent. And the shows are great. Like, I really enjoy the shows, but I'm curious, like, what is it going to take? Because, and I think you're uniquely qualified to answer this, because once upon a time, hey man, you threw a bunch of money at, let's go get Hulk Hogan. Let's go get Randy Savage. Let's get Mean Gene. Let's get Bobby the Brain. You had, and obviously you still had Sting, and you had Lex Luger. And then even when you got Nitro, man, you went head to head. That was a bold move. You put your money where your mouth was, but it took that one big idea that was outside of the box to create the NWO. And that is really what set it on fire. Is that what it's going to take again? I don't think it's a streaming deal. I don't think that, well, hey, AEW was here, then they got a streaming deal, and now they're through the roof. I don't even think it's necessarily more TV time, or am I wrong on that? What will it take to get them level up?
Conrad, you're absolutely right. And I've been saying this from the get-go, and so many people that listen to me on this podcast and the news sites. And I, by the way, I appreciate when news sites take clips from our show and put them out there, because it's good for us, right? So thank you very much. And I'm not being critical here, but so often when you clip a comment or two and you put it up there and you write about it, a lot of people didn't hear the whole context of the conversation. So they can either interpret it correctly or interpret it the way they want to interpret it, depending on their point of view of me and our show or whatever. But I've been saying from day one, whether it's about WWE or whether it's about AEW, it's a commitment to story. And AEW is proving my point. The fact that they have plateaued, in my opinion, is proving that exact point. You can add whoever you want to your roster, and it won't matter beyond a week or two unless the audience is engaged in a compelling story that makes them look forward to next week, not because they're just wrestling fans and they want to see a 4-star, Tokyo Dome. No, that's not going to grow the audience. That's going to satisfy the audience you already have. But if
that's how you pay off the story, right? That's not how you build the story.
That's how, sure. I mean, if you can have that kind of a phenomenal, athletic match, great. And it's a payoff to a story. That's a very good point. That's excellent. That's perfect. But if you're not building stories that people focus on, talk about, relate to, and makes them want to come back every week and see where it's going next, if you're not doing that, I don't give a, you could take WWE's existing roster in its entirety, bring it over to AEW, and nothing is going to happen. So it's story. And until first of all, you have to have a basic understanding of how to tell a story. And I don't see it. I don't see it in WWE, and I don't see it in AEW. Listen up, muckerfuthers. If you just can't get enough of 83 weeks, we've got tons more waiting for you over at adfreeshows.com. Bonus episodes, all the archives with zero, yes, I said zero ads. Plus, we've got interactive events and experiences with yours truly. You can ask me anything, chat one-on-one during our live locked and loaded events. Do yourself a favor. Right now, Google the internet and you won't find a better value in all of wrestling. Come on, man, you can't beat it. Join the family today at adfreeshows.com.
I mean, I think that's a little, first of all, let me say this. I do think sometimes we're using broad strokes here on the show. There has been growth within AEW. So when we say plateau, I think a lot of people hear that and think, oh, well, they're saying that they're not moving at all. I think they are moving, but I think it's been what I would call incremental growth. It hasn't been the explosive growth that I and a lot of other folks thought, well, man, when they get Daniel Bryan fresh off WrestleMania, this is going to be, man, when CM Punk comes back, we didn't ever know he was coming back. My goodness, this is just going to, and we did, to your point, get those, moments, those weeks. But then maybe we didn't set the hook properly in terms of what that story is. But I want to, everything that we talk about here on the show, we try to relate back to back in the day. I don't think there's been a story that was as well done. I mean, it was one of the best stories ever. The whole Sting, Hulk Hogan, NWO thing. But then when we did get to what was supposed to be the conclusion, Starrcade 97, their match was not a 5-star Tokyo Dome match. And maybe
it was a huge disappointment for everybody.
Yes. And so, but the build to it was phenomenal. And that is really what carried the promotion for 18 months. And I think that is, maybe we're getting, to use another Southern phrase, the cart before the horse. We've got the great matches, but we don't have this, I can't wait to see what happens today. But man, they keep throwing great ideas. I mean, we saw Swerve make his debut. He's going to be a big time talent one day. I'm sure of it. We saw Scorpio Sky finally get his flowers and become TNT champion, the first guy to be tag champ and TNT champ. You and I both think a lot of him. And I thought they were going to go that direction, back a couple of years ago. And man, how exciting was it to see William Regal with a microphone in his hand? I don't know that you saw the segment, but him talking to Tony Schiavone and getting emotional, man, that's as real as wrestling gets, and just great stuff. And then we got the whole Jeff Hardy thing. Like, Jeff Hardy's back, but not only that, the Hardy Boys are back. That's nostalgia. That's cool stuff. I dig it. But I think you're right. I think we're looking for that big story, but candidly, I don't know what that is. And I don't know that anybody does. I don't think those big ideas are just growing on trees. It's going to be,
but Conrad, that's what I'm trying to say. If you do now, again, we're using the words story and storyline as it relates to wrestling.
Right.
And you could argue, if I'm in AEW, I'm going to argue that they do have great storylines. They have storylines.
Yeah.
But they're not great storylines. If they were, the audience would have grown, and the audience hasn't. They're satisfying their existing audience. There isn't, and the same thing, by the way, is true, in my opinion, with WWE.
Oh, for sure.
So this is not me picking on AEW. This is me talking about wrestling in general. And by the way, I've been saying the same thing for years. Until and unless somebody goes, okay, well, we've added every sumbitch we could find that's available, and some massive names and incredible talent.
Yeah.
And it's not really growing the audience. You look at AEW last week, look at their quarter hour, Brandon Thurston, who, turns himself into a fucking pretzel every week, trying to spin things as best he can for AEW. And he does a tremendous amount of research, and there's all kinds of cool graphs and colors and all kinds of information that's not in any kind of context at all, but it's a lot of information. But you look at his quarter hour breakdown that I saw last week, and AEW took a precipitous drop from their lead in. Yeah, in terms of numbers, maybe 100,000 viewers they opened up with, and it was a pretty significant drop into the next quarter hour. You don't want that. As a television producer, that is the kiss of death. When you can't maintain the audience for your lead in, the expectation is, especially in prime time. Now, if you're on at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, nobody really cares too much. But when you're in the sweet spot of prime time, which is 8 to 10, that it doesn't get any better than that time slot. And your lead in does better than you do, and you can't hold that audience. I trust me when I tell you this, and I don't give a fuck what anybody else says, that's never been in the television business, that's never sold television, that's never produced television, that's never made a living in the television industry. If you're an executive, in a program executive, and you're going, wow, look what happened to our 8 to 10 time slot. We had a great lead in, and they lost 10% of the audience. That trust me when I tell you this, the expectation, or the goal at least, is that if you open up with 1.3 million from 7 to 8, the expectation is you're going to do 1.5 million to 1.6 million in the 8 to 10 time slot, because that's a sweet spot of prime time. And when you fail to do that, not only maintain the audience, but actually lose a percentage of it, there are going to be influences within the television management of what is soon to be Discovery that'll go, wait a minute, that's not how this shit works. What are we doing here? That's not what we want. That's where the risk is, by not growing the audience. And that's just a fact. That's how television works. So I'm begging, please. Tony Khan already has some of the best minds that you could buy, because he did, surrounding him. He doesn't have to bring anybody else in. And by the way, I'm not pitching for a job. I wouldn't go to work for AEW and Tony Khan, not because I don't respect them, and I probably would get along great with Tony if we ever sat down and
I'm sure
chatted. It's not that. It's just that in my life where I'm at, there is no way I would step into that arena again. Just don't have it in me anymore. But it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people around Tony right now that have it. Now, what they don't have is somebody that can convert all of that great wrestling knowledge that Tony Khan is surrounded with and turn it into a kind of a structured formula that works, that they can go to. Take out this storyline, plug in this storyline. Yes, you got to change it up. It's a different storyline. It's different characters, but the formula remains the same. And until that happens, neither WWE, which they're not doing it either, they're working their ass. And I know a lot of the writers that are there. A lot of them I have a tremendous amount of respect and affection for, truly. But they're not able to execute what they know how to do, because you've got one guy at the top that makes up his mind, and it is what it is. We all know it. In AEW, they just haven't found their feet yet. And I'm praying that they do, because until they do, the audience is going to stagnate, and they're always going to be vulnerable to the next team of management that come in and have a different opinion about what they should be doing with the most valuable real estate in their entire schedule.
I'm a little shocked to hear you, I don't know, feels like take a shot at WrestleNomics and Brandon Thurston. You don't think there's value in what he does?
I subscribe, so clearly I do, but it's so apparent to me in the way, and again, this is so much of it is very subtle. I mean, Brandon is much more subtle than Dave Meltzer's obvious. Dave Meltzer never talks about contracts, how much money you're being paid to talent. Dave Meltzer, and I'm pointing out the things that Dave was so critical and still has been critical of me for, signing all these talent and not even doing anything with them. Fuck, I used to get beat about the head with that shit every week. I haven't heard nothing about ATM Tony, right? It was much more of a automatic teller than Eric Bischoff ever was. Now, again, not a criticism, just an observation. I don't care. At this point, doesn't fucking matter. But isn't it interesting how obvious Dave is? Now, Brandon is much more subtle. He uses research to kind of make his point, and he takes his shots in a much, much more subtle way. But if you can't see that Brandon Thurston is an AEW surrogate, then okay, I can't help you.
Well,
or you don't care, and that's fine too. It doesn't matter.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.